We have further considered whether Wade Wilson should be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole or death. We, the jury, find by a vote of 10-2 that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death. Dated this 20...
Wade Wilson's reaction to the jury recommending the death penalty in his case was a mix of defiance and resignation.
Day of June 2024 in Lee County, Florida, foreperson 234.
On June 12, 2024, the same jury that had convicted him of 2 counts of first-degree murder delivered their recommendation for his fate. The courtroom, filled with the tension of the moment, bore witness to Wilson's response as the weight of the jury's decision settled in. Wilson was found guilty of the first-degree murders of Kristine Melton, 35, and Diane Ruiz, 43, crimes that had shaken the community of Cape Coral, Florida. The brutal nature of the murders left a lasting scar on the victims' families and friends, as well as on the community at large. On October 7, 2019, Kristine Melton was found dead in her home, her body bound and wrapped, her skin turned blue, and her fingernails broken, grim indicators of the violence she endured. Diane Ruiz was discovered dead in an empty lot on the same day, both women having been strangled to death. The brutality and coordination of the murders painted a picture of a cold and calculated killer. Throughout the trial, Wilson had maintained a veneer of detachment, often appearing unemotional and unaffected by the proceedings. This demeanor did not change as the jury recommended the ultimate punishment. When the recommendation was read, Wilson sat still, his face betraying little emotion. However, those who knew him or had followed the case closely could sense a deeper underlying turmoil. In the moments following the jury's recommendation, Wilson's defense team conferred quietly with him, likely discussing the next steps and potential appeals. The prosecution, satisfied with the outcome, exchanged nods of approval. For the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, the jury's decision brought a sense of justice, albeit tempered by the loss they would forever feel. Wilson's reaction became more animated as he was led out of the courtroom. Reporters and observers noted his defiant stance. He stood tall, his head held high, and his expression hardened. Some interpreted this as a final act of defiance, a refusal to show fear or remorse even in the face of death. As he was escorted away, Wilson reportedly muttered under his breath, though the exact words were inaudible to those in the gallery. In subsequent interviews with the media, members of the victims' families expressed a range of emotions. Some found solace in the jury's recommendation, feeling that justice had been served. Others grappled with the complexity of the situation, expressing sorrow over the loss of 2 lives and the heavy burden of another potential death. For them, Wilson's lack of visible remorse was a bitter pill to swallow, underscoring the cold-blooded nature of his crimes. Legal experts weighed in on the case, noting that while the death penalty recommendation was not unexpected, given the severity and brutality of the murders, the road ahead would involve numerous appeals and legal maneuvers. Florida's death penalty process is notoriously lengthy, with many cases spending years, if not decades, winding their way through the appeals system. Wilson's attorneys were expected to challenge the recommendation on various grounds, including potential procedural errors and questions about the fairness of the trial. Wilson's case also sparked broader discussions about the death penalty itself. Advocacy groups on both sides of the issue used the high-profile nature of the trial to highlight their respective arguments. Opponents of the death penalty argued that it was an inhumane and outdated form of punishment, pointing to the possibility of wrongful convictions and the high costs associated with death row appeals. Proponents, on the other hand, contended that the death penalty was a necessary deterrent and a just response to the most heinous crimes. As Wilson awaited formal sentencing, he was placed in a high-security section of the local jail under constant surveillance. His interactions with other inmates and staff were closely monitored, given the notoriety of his case and the potential for unrest. Reports from within the jail indicated that Wilson maintained a stoic demeanor, interacting minimally with others and spending most of his time in his cell. In the days following the jury's recommendation, Wilson's family released a statement through his attorneys. They expressed their deep sorrow for the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, stating that they did not condone his actions, but also pleaded for mercy, emphasizing their belief in the sanctity of life. This plea, however, did little to sway public opinion, which was largely in favor of the jury's decision. The final sentencing hearing, scheduled for a few months later, would be the next crucial step in the process. During this hearing, the judge would review the jury's recommendation and the arguments from both the defense and the prosecution before making a final decision.